Hello, welcome to another episode of Glorious Life on Wheels. Today, I want to talk to you about a new executive order that was signed into effect last week. I believe it's going to have an absolutely devastating impact on people living in vans or other vehicles. But there's also a component to this new executive order that, to me, has potentially sinister overtones and could, in my opinion, at some point deprive some van dwellers and vehicle dwellers of their very freedom. Come on and join me, and I'll tell you all about my concerns. For those of you who are not aware, a new executive order was signed by the President dealing with homelessness on July 24th of this year. I was actually able to read a copy of the executive order, and the title of it, from what I could determine, is Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets. Based on what I read, it appears the focus of the executive order is to outlaw and disband any homeless encampments throughout the country, particularly in urban areas. But the thing that's disturbing to me is how it's set forth to do this in the executive order. For the last decade or more, the philosophy in this country in dealing with those that are homeless has been housing first initiatives. In other words, the thinking was, if you have people who are living on the streets, your first priority was to get them housed, to get them off the streets and into safe and secure housing with a roof over their heads. Then, if they had other issues that needed to be dealt with, such as substance abuse or mental health issues, you started working on those only after you had them housed. Well, from what I can gather and what it states in the new executive order, that's no longer going to be the case. Now, the focus is going to be on mental health and substance abuse and treatment for that. And based on the executive order wording, it appears that the assumption is that everyone, or the majority rather, I should say, of people on the streets either have substance abuse issues or mental health issues. One of the ways they're planning to disband homeless encampments is not just to go after people who are living in tents or who are living under overpasses or things like that. Based on the wording of this executive order, they're also going to be going after people who are parking overnight while they sleep in their vehicles. And that's van life, folks, and nomads. In the executive order, it laid out about how it would be determining what cities might be receiving grants to help with homelessness within their boundaries or their borders. Now, we know that a lot of cities have had financial problems, so they're going to be looking to get money from the federal government. In order to be eligible for discretionary grants to help with fighting homelessness, states and municipalities are going to be graded on certain criteria and how they do that to the maximum extent of the law, according to the executive order. One of the criteria was enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering. For purposes of defining a homeless person who was camping in a city area, it used to have to be someone who was either living in a tent, had pitched a tent and was staying in there, or had built some kind of shelter using tarps or something like that. But no more. Now people who are sleeping overnight in their vehicles, boondocking, are considered camping. Over the last several years, I've seen more and more signs like this that restrict parking, and you can't park there between, say, 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., times when people usually sleep. And then they started having more that would say no oversized vehicles parked during a certain time frame. But in the last couple of weeks, I've started to see signs like this that actually say no camping or sleeping in vehicles. So now what they're saying, if you sleep in your vehicle, you are considered camping. Did you notice what else it said on that last sign? It said police enforced, violators will be prosecuted. Well, the only way you can be prosecuted is if you've committed a crime. So now sleeping in your car or quote unquote camping in your car on a city street, on a public street, in many areas, and I would venture to say in all areas eventually, is going to be against the law, and you will be considered a criminal. Based on this tough approach, I can also see fines that used to be $50, $60 going up to a couple $100 because cities are going to start seeing this as a cash cow. I can also see where this is going to lead to vehicles being towed and it costing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get your vehicle back, especially if it's towed on a Friday and you can't get it back till a Monday. And oftentimes in places, they double the storage fees on weekends. San Francisco has already started putting a 2-hour limit on how long certain vehicles, particularly RVs or vehicles that look like RVs, can park in the city. And I see that spreading to other cities also. But you know what? As bad as all that is, and how much more difficult it is going to make it for people sleeping in vehicles to find somewhere safe to park overnight that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, that's not the worst part, in my opinion, of this new executive order. The worst part is downright scary. This part of the executive order is outlined partially in Section 1, where it talks about shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings. Get that? Institutional settings. For humane treatment through appropriate use of civil commitment. What is civil commitment, you ask? Civil commitment is when the government, through the court system, can take someone and involuntarily, against their will, they don't want to go there, commit them to a mental health institution, or in this case, a drug rehab program, because that's what they're going to be focusing on, mental health and substance abuse. I don't see anywhere in this executive order where it talks about who is going to have the authority to do that. So if a policeman sees someone who they deem to be homeless and loitering or camping in their car even, will they be able to just say, you know what, you look to be high or you look to have mental health issues, and we're going to take you in and see about getting a court order to institutionalize you? I mean, do you see how particularly scary this could be? Who is going to determine? Are these people who identify someone as homeless? First of all, who decides who's homeless and who's not? And what kind of training will someone have to determine if a person has serious substance abuse problems or mental health issues? I mean, who hasn't gone through a depression of some sort at some point in their life, or maybe PTSD from some traumatic event? And will that present as serious mental illness that will get you institutionalized? It doesn't say anything in the executive order as to how long it could be. Could it be days? Well, it wouldn't be days, because it's highly unlikely you'd go to court and get a civil commitment for a few days. You could just do a 72-hour hold. So it'll be likely months. Could it even be years? And if there are hundreds of thousands of homeless people, and the presumption is that the majority of them have mental health problems and or substance abuse, where are you going to get all the beds to put them in institutions. So are you going to have camps like you have for immigrants where you're going to put people? I mean, it just is mind-boggling. But here's how it could connect and impact van life folks. More and more, I've been seeing a move to go from connecting houseless to homeless. And I saw a term recently that I shared with some of you on one of my lives. And the term that was used in an article, I think it was vehicular homelessness. So let me connect the dots here. So if you now determine people who don't have a sticks and bricks but live in a vehicle as homeless, and you encounter them sleeping in their vehicle, maybe on a city street, and when this person who encounters them, who's in an official capacity, decides, based on what criteria, I don't know, that they need to be civilly committed because they have some kind of mental health or substance abuse problem, I can easily see this leading to people who are living in vehicles being institutionalized. There are a lot of people who leave bad situations, domestic violence situations, and other situations that may have PTSD, and they may present as they have some kind of mental illness when they're just suffering from trauma. But I don't know. This looks like a very, very slippery and dangerous slope to me. Let me know in the comments what you think and where you think this could end up. With everything else that's going on right now, I'm very concerned. I'm going to keep tabs on what's happening and try and find out how this is being enforced. I've been watching to see how different cities are going to be enforcing these guidelines, or this executive order, I should say. And even some officials are saying they're not quite sure what they're going to do or how they're going to enforce it. But I especially want to know who's going to make the determination that someone needs to be taken in and committed on a civil commitment. That is key. But anyhow, I will see you next time. I tell you, things are happening so fast and furious, it's hard to keep up with them. But I will try to keep you posted to the best of my ability. Meanwhile, I love each and every one of you, and I will hopefully see you down the road. And I hope your journeys are filled with joy and blessings. And stay safe out there.